Okay, welcome to the end of the series. I hope you guys have enjoyed watching the process of remixing a Pitch Black track from start to finish. If you've been watching this, you realize that I haven't really done any kind of mastering or post-process work on the track myself, because I knew I had a professional who was going to do this for me, which is fantastic because I am definitely not a great masterer myself. It's definitely my weak area. So it was quite nice writing knowing someone was going to take that over. And we're very fortunate enough to have the man himself, Angus McNaughton, with us via Skype here tonight. I know it's late then, Angus, and I appreciate you taking the time to answer a few questions. And yeah, hopefully it's nice for the people who are watching to actually get an idea of how you made it sound as fat as it is, because I listened to it this morning and it is awesome. So welcome.
Yeah, great. Then great to be here.
We'll start it off here. We'll just really basically, if you want to give your name, your company name, and how long you've been mastering for, etc. General introduction.
Yeah, Angus McNaughton, Auralux Mastering, and I've been mastering for about 15 years plus now, quite a long time. But yeah, great to be here, and I'm really happy you like the master. That's so important. Yeah, I'm glad you like what I did, because I was wondering what you'd think of what I came up with.
No, it's really well done, man. And there's some particular areas of it that I'm quite interested in, which we'll get into shortly. I also just talked to Gene briefly on Facebook as well, because you're also mastering Gene Kennedy's remix of the same track, and he seems pretty over the moon with his results as well. So well done all around. Very, very good. Okay, so
that's great.
First thing I notice in the shop we've got here, we've got a desk with a bunch of cool looking gear and knobs and that kind of thing. Do you want to just give us a brief rundown of what we are looking at here?
Yep, so the way I do my mastering is I've got quite a suite of different digital plug-in processing that like you'd expect, but I'm also combining that with analog equipment.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, in terms of the analog domain, I just basically process it with some digital plugins, then run it through an analog loop and run it back through some A to D converters. And just gives me the opportunity to try to, put a couple of analog layers, a bit of a layer of that sound in as well. For your track, I'm using 3 of these. I'm using this valve compressor called the Phoenix, which is just a really nice valve compressor, subtle sort of sound. And also I'm using this EQ, which is called the Buzz Audio REQ 2.2.
Right.
Just a really nice stereo EQ. And and there's another compressor here as well called the Boot FCS. So that's a different type of compressor. The valve compressor has got quite a slow sound, because that's the natural sound of valve compression. It isn't very fast and grabby and very punchy. It's more of a bit of a spongy sort of sound. And this VCA type solid state VCA compressor is just got a different way of reacting to the sound. And yeah, not that this track needed compression, to be honest, a lot of it, because dynamically it was pretty well held together, and so I certainly didn't want to slam on a whole lot of compression, and just over compress it. We just end up sounding really it would lose all its punch. So I wanted to definitely keep the percussive punch on things like kick drums, especially. So it's really just a very, very subtle little touch of, that's what mastering really is, I think, is a lot of very small, subtle things that kind of add together to become noticeably nicer sounding, but you're certainly not trying to be too extreme, and when you don't need to be.
Gotcha. And so you said the mix I sent you was quite good in the sense that not much compression was needed, if not any. And I actually sent you through one mix down, which was the whole track, and then I sent you also some stems in case you needed to do a bit more work on individual parts, such as the kick and the bass. But I believe you ended up just using the overall mix completely, like that was totally sufficient. Was that correct?
Yeah. I didn't think it was necessary to use stems, but it's a really good thing to supply. sometimes, but not always necessary. I thought it was a good sounding mix.
Yeah.
Without needing to go for the stems.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear, because we were talking about that during the live streams and stuff, and I'm like, and you know how the track, it does go from chill to kind of more of a beat-driven thing in the second half. So there's kind of two areas there, and I was like, he's probably going to want to have the bass kind of separated out so they could make things a bit normal and that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, listening to the track, the overall impression was that it's just a really great sounding remix. That it's very sort of multi-layered and spatial sounding, and with quite a lot going on. It's a very dynamic kind of track in the way it builds, and it goes into the second section, where it gets into the sort of louder section. There's quite a few stages of what's going on. So I did end up doing a little bit of automation in a couple of different ways, which is not something I normally do. But there's just a couple of specific things I actually did for this remix that I thought it needed. What I thought it was just missing a little bit of sort of a little bit of low end, and especially listening to after it mastered the Pitch Black album, and listening to the other remix of the same song, I thought it needed a little bit more bass. So
gotcha.
And it's not just a case of boosting it. I did boost it in the second half in particular. But I actually thought the bass was just a wee bit. I thought it was just getting a wee bit lost, because the tone was a wee bit pure in terms of the sine. It was a lot of kind of pure tone sine wave sort of stuff going on. And then,
we did some interesting work in the halfway through the kind of the chill area. We were just kind of toying around with just having bringing up a few harmonics, like the third and fourth and fifth harmonics of the sine wave bass, just to give it a little bit more emphasis, because when all the busyness starts happening, I kind of thought it would be a nice way. And we actually spread them out as well, so we didn't have the fundamental, we just had the third, fourth and fifth harmonics slightly spread out to the sides, and that was a total experiment. I had no idea if that was going to work, but it sounded all right in my monitors anyway. Also, just on the bass tip, you mentioned that there's a bit of a difference, obviously, between the first half, where it's more of a dubby kind of chill bass, and then we move over to 4/4, and the bass is a little bit more grimy, and it does even get a little bit more, I don't know if grimy is the right word, but it gets a bit more techno in a way. So is that kind of where you did your automation there? You kind of had to add two different ways of working on the bass.
Essentially, I just gave, in the second half, I'm just got it playing at the moment, I just thought it needed, I just felt like you got a pretty good feel for the bass in the first half. That was working pretty well. And, it had already been boosted a bit by the bass enhancement, which I'll run you through. But in the second half, I just thought it needed a bit more low end of actual EQ. So I've just put a bit of a hump on the ozone equalizer. And that's just centered around, what frequency is that? That's just centered around 61 hertz. Broad just boost of a couple of dB.
Broadened up.
I've actually just used automation to just lift that up a wee bit in the second half. And I was a little bit worried I was hoping I wasn't going too far with it, but
no, I think it's perfect, man. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I had a couple of listens. I had a listen this morning when I was nice and fresh, and I also listened last night when I was a little bit drunk, and they sounded great in both states. So that's a win-win for me. Just quick.
What the thing about the second half is, you've got a lot of it's a big build up, and you've got a lot of spatial, I don't know what you call that stuff, a lot of sort of effects and layers and pad sort of sounds and stuff, and that really fills out the mid-range in quite a big way. So I just felt like a little bit more wind balances that a little bit,
Totally.
So,
I guess. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, bass was just getting a little bit overwhelmed by the mid-range.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. You mentioned in the email you sent back to me, yeah, there's a lot more space around the high ends. I believe you referred to them as air frequencies, which I completely understand. And yeah, that to me they all sound quite connected than what they did when I sent through the Unmaster. Like kind of there's a lot of wailing synths and fluffy sounds and big dub delays that go off into the distance. And yeah, they all kind of sound quite together now, whereas before they were quite segregated. What was your thinking process when you were going through that?
With the top end, I mean it's an interesting one. It's just I just did a typical what mastering guys talk about is what they call an air boost, which is just the high frequencies above 10k.
Right.
You just choose a nice EQ to do a kind of a shelving boost, but you just try and choose a curve where you're it's just picking out the right frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something I always do in the analog domain. It doesn't mean to say you have to do that. You just have to listen to what EQ you've got available and just try and work out, is it a sweet sounding boost or does it sound harsh? It's always a potential nightmare because it can just pick out the wrong things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, essentially, what I did to start off in terms of top end, what I did to start off the chain was actually just run a de-esser. So I've got this Waves Renaissance de-esser just sitting there. It's like a high frequency limiter. So if something gets too bright, it just starts doing a bit of limiting.
And so is that the kind of the definition of a de-esser for those who don't know? Is it a kind of a limiter for kind of high end type stuff, or
high frequency limiter?
High frequency limiter, right?
Only react to the tops. Yeah.
Very.
So.
Very
it
cool.
just, a de-esser is something people use for voices, for sibilants, but you can stick it on a whole mix and it does a very similar thing.
Gotcha.
Just, if something too bright, it'll just slightly attenuate the tops.
Yeah.
But what a de-essers allow you to do is actually boost it afterwards anyway. So if you're intending to brighten something a little bit, if you just have a bit of a de-esser on there, it means that the really bright things that come along are a little bit controlled.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
So tiny, but to be honest, people who put de-essers on, they usually just have them cranking all the time, and it doesn't sound good. It's really important to set the threshold high so that it's not doing a lot. It's only very occasionally popping in there.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's just the first stage. And another thing, so I'm really just doing all of the top end is just a bit of a boost over here on this EQ.
Yeah.
However, different parts of the song, and there's like 3 different stages in the song that I thought needed different amounts of top end adjustments.
Yeah.
So
I do appreciate
intro,
it.
you've got like field recording sound in the intro.
Yeah.
I don't know what those sounds are, sound effects or something coming in.
Yeah, we got some rain and thunder, and we spent a whole session, nearly 2 hours, just trying to make the sound of a building falling down in an apocalypse. Like it was a bit of fun. So just trying to get the sounds of crunching beams and big sub booms of buildings falling in the distance. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, but what didn't work was boosting the tops. I didn't boost the tops in the intro because it just sounded hissy.
Yeah.
So it just brought out the natural hiss in those recordings. So that sounded pretty bad. So I basically had that no top boost in the intro, a fair bit of top end boost in during the main song first section, the dubby section.
Yep.
And then a different type of top end boost in the second half of the song with the hi-hat was different.
Yep.
So one thing I should talk about at some point is mid-side EQ.
Yeah.
Mid-side techniques, something I use. So I did mid-side EQ, and that one of the things I do with this analog equipment, instead of you can see this equalizer here.
Yeah.
If you look at the left-hand side, you got 4 bands of EQ on the left-hand side, 4 bands of EQ on the right hand side,
Mhm.
but I'm not actually using it in left and right mode at all. I'm
Right.
using it in mid-side mode, which means I'm EQing on that side of the EQ. I'm EQing the mono signal,
Gotcha.
and on the side of the EQ, I'm EQing the stereo
On the space.
information.
Right.
Yeah.
So would that be
it's
a brief rundown of sorry, what did you call it?
mid-side processing.
Processing,
It's a pretty
yeah.
powerful technique for mastering mid-side processing. Essentially, it's encoding the signal. You run it through. It's sort of just a mathematical. It's just a bit of addition and subtraction, actually. You know how when you add the left and right channel together, you go left plus right equals mono.
Yeah.
If you subtract the left and right signals from each other, you will get what isn't mono. So
Yeah.
if you left minus right, you will get only the stereo information without the mono signal.
Yeah.
So essentially, to encode a left-right signal into mid and side, you add them together to get one channel of mono,
Mhm.
and then subtract them from each other to get the side signal, and that's your second channel.
Yeah.
And that can be run any type of processor in that format, and as a mid-side format, it can be run through any type of stereo equipment. And instead of having left and right, you have mid and side.
Gotcha.
So it just allows you to do stuff with processing that it's really powerful for mastering, because you can do things. You can just listen to what's in the stereo field completely independently from what's in the mono field. So
Right.
what I'll show you is to illustrate that. Yep.
Love to hear it. Yeah.
I'll just play this to you now. I mean, this is one thing I do. Now you probably can't see this very well, but on the left, you can on that side. So this processor we've got here is called a BrainWorks BX
Okay.
Digital. BrainWorks BX Digital. It's an EQ similar to this one over here, the analog one, but it's a really good plugin. Now this works in mid-side mode, and essentially what I do, I'll just play the track now.
Okay.
And what you're able to do is hit the one thing I always do is solo the side. So what we're currently listening to now is the whole song, right?
Right.
So that's just everything sounding normal.
Yeah.
Now if I hit the button here, okay, so I've soloed the side, so it's completely cancelled out. All of the kick drum, all the bass is gone.
Yep.
And I'm hearing the ambience and the reverbs, and I can just do things to that independently of the other stuff. So it's really great with the EQ. You can also use compression on mid-side if you want to.
Got you. And is this this particular technique, is this something that you would use in the majority of the tracks that you do master? Is it a kind of like a absolute necessary thing?
It's something I'm really into, and I think a lot of mastering is pretty keen on it, just because it allows you to, say if you're working on a song with vocals in it, you can do things to the vocals separate from, like if you got a rock song with drums, the overheads, when they're smashing away on cymbals, there'll be lots of that in the side channel.
Mm-hmm.
And it allows you to sort of quite transparently make little changes to parts of the mix.
Gotcha.
But you can, and on the side channel, you can sculpt the EQ more. And one thing I do on your track actually is, if I'm looking over here at this EQ, I like to hear warmth. I want to make sure there's a nice, with the stereo information, I like it to sound quite warm and enveloping.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about low mid frequencies. So I actually put quite a big boost at about it's like 200 hertz of just the low mids, only in the side channel, and that makes it a bit warmer and more surround sound. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Very interesting stuff. I'll move along just so we can keep this a bit more short. So You did the remix for the Pitch Black album a few weeks ago. Obviously, that was your mastering work. Very good work, by the way. Yeah, and in about 6 weeks, these remixes are going to be released. I believe it's myself, Gene K, and the original Pitch Black without the trees one. And you've mastered all 3 of those as well. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yep. And yeah, you mentioned that when you're mastering one particular track, you're also keeping in mind the other tracks that are going to kind of be accompanying that track or be in the same package. So yeah, how does that work for something, like, I mean, obviously the original that Pitch Black did was a very ambient, almost non-beat driven track, and then you've got something like mine where I've gone way over the top and tried to turn it into this big trip and big journey. Yeah, I mean, what kind of thought process do you go through when you're considering all those 3 tracks as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a bit of a feel thing in comparison. Having good monitoring is really critical.
Yep.
And just being confident about, how far you can push something to try and get it to an adequate volume where it's still not destroying it with limiting.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've sort of got to make it about as loud as I can make it. Without it starting to sound really ugly. So it generally, I just do a bit of comparison, listen to the album, listen to the other mix. That's why obviously why I wanted you to have more low end and more bass in your mix, so that it didn't sound bass light in comparison to the rest of the stuff.
Totally. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, really there are individual things with your track and the way it develops. It has the louder section. I just knew that, because it has more of a dynamic, a quieter intro, I didn't want that to end up sounding too quiet, because it goes through a few minutes of being more, dubby and low key. I didn't want that to end being get too lost in terms of level. So yeah, I just did some comparison, and I thought it worked. I thought it matched up well with the album.
Yeah, good. And I guess it must be a pleasure working with, I'm just assuming here, working with Pitch Black as far as mastering goes, because I've always known them to be the king of dynamics in a way, like even at live shows when I've been playing with them on stage, the amount of stroppiness or attention that they give to the sound guy is like, we want a flat signal and we need speakers on each side of us. So yeah, they're pretty onto it with that side of things. So I imagine that must be a nice thing to work with as a masterer.
Oh yeah, it's great fun. Yeah.
I guess I'll just jump here to the final question here, which was what did you use any kind of plugins that weren't automated on kind of the master, just kind of throughout the entire track?
Yeah, so I'll just run you through. I mean, what I'm also using, so we've got this Brainworks BX Digital, which is just an EQ, but it's a mid-side EQ. The one that I didn't really talk about was this bass, this one that I used, which I actually never use, which is never normally used, which is called Brainworks BX Saturator. It's called BX Saturator. Right. It's just a saturation plugin that adds a tiny bit of distortion.
Yeah.
But it is mid-side distortion, and it's got crossovers built in.
Okay.
So, sorry I don't have proper screencasting here for you to look closely.
It's okay. You're good at explaining things, so it's good.
Yeah, I can just show you. If I just play it to you, and then I'm playing the dubby section. Now, essentially, what we've got here is a crossover. So I'll solo the bass, and so that's the low end, right? I'm listening to now. Now, what I've done is just dialed in a bit of distortion, just a tiny bit, and it's all about the quality of the distortion. Yeah. So, like, if I go crazy with it now, and I'll show you what the distortion sounds like when it's overdriven.
Push it, yeah.
So that's really hard. That's really overdriven, but you can hear the quality of the distortion. And then see what we're doing with that is just mixing in just a wee bit of it, and that increases the bass, but also it makes it a bit more audible. I just thought it was getting a bit lost.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Using this thing called BX Saturator. I tried quite a few different bass enhancement techniques actually. and that's what I thought sounded the best.
Yeah.
Another big plugin that a lot of people use is Isotope Ozone 7.
Yeah. That's
Isotope
my
Ozone
that's my
7.
go-to. But I'll be honest, I'm usually just a preset flicker until it sounds good. That's about my extent of using it.
It's an amazing bit of software, and you can definitely do the whole thing on Ozone for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, because I use a bit of a broad suite of different types of things. I just use it for certain things, and in this case, it's really we've just got this I've just got a bit of corrective EQ, so I've just got a few little cuts, just a few little harmonics that were poking out a bit too much.
Yeah.
But overall, I thought it was actually sounding great EQ wise. But yeah, it just ended up if you spend quite a while listening through speakers, you start hearing a few little overtones that get a little bit too much. So just cut like 1 or 2 dB of some of these frequencies. And there's sort of in the upper bass area, so 130, 207, those sort of things. That's what I ended up cutting. So that's corrective little cuts there. I have used multiband, and so if we just have a wee look at the multiband that I used, what I did with this multiband was, let's have a look. I do have, in the low band, I do have a tiny bit of limiting on it. It's more of a safety valve, and it's only limiting by, it's sort of nothing. Just in case when something really big happens. So normally it shouldn't be limiting at all. It's just something really massive happens, it just controls it a bit. Because I'm aware that I am boosting the bass, so I'm trying to sort of add more bass, but I don't want it to blow up people's speakers when something enormous happens, you know what I mean?
Because I remember that first
that
first kick out of the intro that I have when it drops in, I really made that quite loud, just for a bit of fun, and then I went, I actually think that's a cool effect. That's it's a bit of a risk to take, and even Mike said to me, I wasn't sure about the kick and the lowness and the compression that you had on it, but I quite like it just a kick, and then it slowly fades away into a normal sounding kind of poppy kick. So
yeah, I can hear you did a duck or something there, or a side chain or something like that, eh?
Yeah, and also in the intro, lots of big bass subby drops, which have reverb on them and lots of cancellation going on as well. So, but they sound amazing in the mix. So I'm very happy with that. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it sounds great. Really great job. And the other bit of multiband I did was just in the upper mid band. So I'll just play you that. The reason I use this, that's just these upper mid frequencies. That's what I've got soloed at the moment. Essentially, I've got multiband, but the way I use multiband, I've essentially got it so that when the song builds up to its highest point, it was getting a bit harsh sounding in the mid.
Yeah.
So what I've done is just have the multiband on an incredibly slow attack and really slow release, so that it's really acting like a bit of a leveler. It's not it's not ducking out. It's just slowly dropping down a little bit.
Gotcha.
So at the peak of the track, it's just like scooping the tops out a wee bit. So that's one thing I do with multiband sometimes, is just use it a way to sort of just scoop. It's like an EQ scoop thing. And just thought it was sounding a bit too brittle in the high mids, just towards the end of the track there. Yeah, at the peak. So yeah, just another little subtle thing. So that's about it really. So just really got this De-esser plugin. Got the Waves Renaissance De-esser. I've got the Brainworks BX Digital EQ, which is a mid-side EQ.
Yeah.
The BX Saturated, doing this little thing to the bass. Isotope Ozone 7. Just doing pretty simple EQ and a tiny bit of very subtle multiband. And then I run it through the analog loop, so it's going through this valve compressor.
Yeah.
When I look at that compressor running, I still got it soloed. I just unsoloed that band. I can look at my gain reduction meter on the valve compressor and see that it's only really moving half a dB.
Yep.
But you notice that it is quite noticeable. Actually, at its peak, the song, it does, at the peak of the song, it compresses by about a decibel. I've got this compressor set up so it's only really reacting to the tops. Are you still there, Tom?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I've got it set up so it's just reacting to the top end. So that's another thing. It's sort of like a multi-band, but you can just do it with a normal compressor, only have it reacting to a certain frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just through this EQ, and then through this other compressor, which is just doing like a quarter of a dB of reacting to the bass a little bit.
Gotcha.
So there you go. It is quite complicated if you think about it.
It's very interesting because I mean, obviously, you know, with mastering and what you've just shown me now, it's obvious experience is the key here. Like, I mean, you know, you've gone through a whole lot of things here. A lot of it I don't understand. Yeah, and it's just it's actually great to actually be able to see what you've done, hear what you've done, and I certainly have learnt quite a lot just from this interview. And really appreciate the time that you've taken to explain it. I know as well, masters. Some masters can be quite, quite concerned about actually showing off their techniques and stuff. But at the end of the day, like it seems like experience is the key, and you most definitely have that. So yeah, I really appreciate you giving us a run through of how it all sounds. The final question I want to ask is where can people go to find out more about you? I know I've got your website here, which is auralaxmastering.com. I'll put that on the screen in the description. Tell us, you know, are you available for work, or I mean, how do you work? You know.
I can do online mastering. I can do, if you're in Auckland in New Zealand, I can do attended mastering here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just encourage you to send me an email if you'd like to get a quote. But just work in lots of different genres. I really like working in electronica genres, but I actually work in pretty much any genre of music as well.
Yeah.
I love working in these electronica type genres with some proper low end and bass in it. It's fun.
Bit of chunk. Yep. What kind of music do you listen to, kind of personally? What's your?
Personally, a bit of a variety, but yeah, I do like a lot of electronic music.
Yeah.
A bit of a mixture actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Feel free to email me if you're interested.
Yeah. Cool.
You know what I haven't talked about is limiting. Doing limiting. Maybe it doesn't matter. You're doing the wrap up.
Oh well, no, go ahead, man. Like, I mean, as I said, mastering is my weak point. So if you think it's something that should be talked about, please go ahead. I'd love to hear.
Yeah, I'll just quickly mention that it's pretty, you talk to mastering engineers about what software they use, and I'm using the software that I use to master with is completely different than what I'd use to compose and mix on.
Yeah.
I'm using Reaper, which is apparently you can do MIDI, on here, and you can load up virtual instruments, but I just wouldn't want to try. But it's really great for mastering, because you can just set up change of effects and clip-based effects, that sort of thing.
And as I understand, it's actually quite a cheap DAW as well, isn't it? I think it's around the $60 mark or something like that.
Yeah, it's an amazing deal for what you get. You actually get 3 licenses for $60 that you can load on cross-platform, because really good cross-platform support. Yeah. I think it's an ideal bit of software for that type of thing, for audio. I mean, people sing on it, and there's quite a community of Reaper users.
Yeah, I've noticed it more and more getting mentioned more and more. I actually saw just a couple of days ago around at a friend of mine's house. I'm not sure if you're familiar, Circuit Bent or Jesse. He was using it with full MIDI, full external effects, using it as a complete production DAW. And he was making amazing music out of it. Like, has showing me like the complexity of macros and how you can map your own custom macros to do almost anything within the DAW itself was quite impressive. Perhaps a bit daunting for somebody who's a bit new to production, but yeah, the level of customization was just astounding.
Yeah, good. Yeah, good to hear.
Okay.
Yeah, good bit of soft.
Final question. Okay. Final question for you. We got to wrap it up here. One tip to give to new aspiring producers / masters, someone who's just getting into it. Obviously, mastering is a scary thing. Even compressors can be really scary at first. Just one quick tip that you reckon might help people on their way.
Okay, one quick tip. I could give you a couple of quick tips.
Or two, or three, or four.
Probably, I'd probably encourage people not to have your mastering just sitting there on your master bus while you're mixing.
Yeah.
Maybe consider doing your mastering as a separate stage.
Okay.
Having a limiter that's really cranking on your master bus doesn't really help your mixing very well, because it's probably better to think about balancing the the layers and using compression on individual channels rather than relying on the limiter to kind of pull things together for you. I think you do a better mix that way.
Gotcha.
But that might be controversial advice, because I know so many producers who would always have a bit of a limiter going there on the master that they can turn on
or the old sound goodizer or whatever it is. Just chuck it on there and crank it, and away you go.
Yeah. So anyway, that's one thing. It's just an idea. Maybe just think about loading up another, coming back another day and doing your mastering with fresh ears and just treating it as a different process. And, mixing is hard enough to have to worry about trying to do a good master while you're trying to finish your mix. So, yeah, maybe bounce out a, 24-bit, 32-bit version without anything on it, as well as your limited version. That'll give you some scope. Just focus on really simple things. I just reckon mastering is just thinking about EQ and limiting, really. They're the important things to get right. Is think about the frequency balance, and doing a bit of corrective EQ, a bit of overall balancing of things like tilting the whole mix in terms of bass and treble, and correct little cuts of harmonics. That's really important. And just knowing how to set a limiter right, so how far you can go. Measuring your levels in RMS average levels rather than peak levels.
Right, yeah.
Because once you've got a limiter cranking, once you get a limiter cranking, of course it's smashing up to zero. You have no idea how loud it really is. If you can just look at a RMS meter, you'll be able to see, oh yeah, I'm getting to -8 RMS.
Yeah.
And that'll help you if you're working on like an album. It just gives you a target to go for in terms of volume. And so that's about 5 different bits of advice, but you just keep it simple. Great
advice. Very, very good.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
I hope it helps, Tom.
That absolutely helps, man. That was more than I even expected for this interview. Really good information. Thank you so much. I know, again, it is Sunday night and you're off in the morning, so I appreciate the time you've taken to basically spread your knowledge, wonderful knowledge, to the internet. It's been a real pleasure to have you. And hopefully, if any of you guys out there watching, if you want to get in touch with Angus, I'll post some links in the description. And you can take it from there. So thank you, and I guess goodbye.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Have a really good day, mate. See you later.
Okay, see ya.